good teams in distress and some other pretty average football in week 12. That's what we're going to talk about today on Stealing Bananas. I'm Ben Gretch. You can find the Stealing Signals newsletter at bengretch.substack.com. With me, as always, is Shawn Siegele. You can find all of his great work over at RotoViz, including this past week in his Banana Stand article. He ranked the bottom half of the league's teams from number 32 to number 17 and explained why they're bad. And I just asked him if he's going to do 1 to 16 this week. He said either this week, maybe next week. It's coming up soon. I'm going to be curious where some of these good teams that struggled in week 12 land on that list, because it's a changing landscape at the top. I mean, if you think back to the 2025, January of 2025, the end of the 2024 season, the postseason this past winter, you had, the Lions is the 1 seed in the NFC. They get upset by the Commanders. They've struggled, and I want to talk about them having a rough day today. You had the Commanders, who beat them, go to the conference championship. They're obviously in complete disarray. They didn't play today. You have the Eagles, who go on to win the Super Bowl, who lose today, blowing a 21-0 lead. Now, they're still 8-3, and Eagles fans are quick to tell you that they still win games, but they're the best looking of the bunch, because over on the AFC side, the teams going into, obviously, the last several postseasons that everyone talks about are the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens. All of those teams have had their struggles this year. The Chiefs come back and win in overtime. And this was the game where I was like, I found myself rooting against the Chiefs. I've always been rooting for the Chiefs for the last several years, even though everyone kind of roots against them, in part because you're a big Chiefs fan, in part because I don't know, I think they're kind of fun. I found myself rooting against Andy Reid pretty hard in this game. There's enough stuff that just annoyed me. The fact that they came back and won was proof that Patrick Mahomes is a very great quarterback, because there is so much nonsense where they're down by multiple scores and they're running Kareem Hunt on 1st and 10 to start drives with like 7 minutes left, and they're playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, it's just absolutely objective.
How did Brashard Smith look on his handful of touches?
Yeah, looked fantastic. And then they just went to Clyde Edwards-Helaire right after that. He had a little screen pass, broke up some broke some tackles, weaved through traffic, got like 10 yards, gets called back by a penalty, and then they just go to CEH for reasons that are, they were the worst team by a lot in this game, and they wind up winning it.
I don't know if you can say they were the worst team. The thing that bothered me in this game was it also, I'm completely out on the Chiefs. This is my team. I was kind of hoping that they would lose, miss the playoffs, and have to reevaluate what they're doing. I told you that last week, Andy Reid dropped multiple spots in my coaching draft, which we still haven't done, but probably will, because it will give us a chance to address some of the things that are frustrating us. Mike Tomlin also free-falling, but Andy Reid free-falling today, even with the victory. But I really wanted to be able to be behind Daniel Jones, be behind Shane Steichen, celebrate Jonathan Taylor, have this offense work when it needed to work, come through and make the big plays. This was a devastating loss for the Indianapolis Colts, which again is just kind of a bummer, because they've been one of the cool stories of this season. The fact that the two best teams in the AFC right now, the Colts and the Broncos, are just still very clearly not better than the Chiefs. That's too bad when the Chiefs are playing like this and should be finished, and today did not finish them.
I gotta walk back that comment that the Colts were clearly the better team, because holy crap, this box score. They only had 10 first downs. They looked really good early, and Daniel Jones was throwing the ball well. The Chiefs did a good job of stopping the run. Now, the 10 first downs is a little bit misleading, because I think a decent number of their first downs were chunk plays. They still had 5.1 yards per play, which the Chiefs had 33 first downs in this game and only had
33 to 10 is lopsided.
Yeah, but 5.4 yards per play. They literally were like 0.3 yards per play better. They did have way more total yards because they ran way more snaps, 494 to 255. Yeah, it was definitely 91 snaps for the Chiefs, only 50 for the Colts. The Colts were good in the first half. They basically didn't run plays in the second half. A lot of 3-and-outs for them. I'm looking at in the fourth quarter, all three of their possessions were 3-and-outs. I guess I didn't And in overtime, they had a 3-and-out. Their final 4 possessions of this game, while they blow a 20-9 lead, they did not get a first down. So that's
and it goes back to
bad.
Some of those the pick where the Chiefs originally passed on Breece Hall and they select the German polo player. He's been very, very, very good. The earlier pick in that draft where they select
the German polo player, for people who aren't familiar, was a college football player, right? But also has
George
a background.
Karlaftis. He's very good.
George
Water
Karlaftis.
polo. Not like riding around on horses. I don't think these guys are allowed
You've
on
described
horses.
him this way to me before, but I don't know that the listeners are going to immediately realize that this is a George Karlaftis reference.
So, and this is kind of one of the things too. You watch the game today with the Raiders, and this isn't excusing all of the mistakes the Raiders made and excusing the fact that Bowers didn't quite show up until, then he would have had nearly a 0, if not 4. It wasn't even garbage time. It was like the time after garbage time where the other team has already started celebrating to the point where they've only got like 4 guys on the field. He caught some passes in that time. But Bowers does have the worst finishing schedule, which I'm sure you wrote about when you did the cool strength of schedule piece for stealing signals, in part because Denver Broncos, Kansas City Chiefs, these AFC West defenses, and then certainly when you run up against the Cleveland Browns, those are not good matchups. The Chiefs have a fantastic defense, but to be in 2025 and for the Chiefs defense to be this much better than their offense with Patrick Mahomes, you can look at it from a variety of perspectives. If they could get things going, and they did get things, and this is one of the reasons why I get both halves count, and I certainly don't think we can say the Colts are better in this game, because as bad as they were in the first half and as bad as they were a week ago, and as silly as all the running plays were, because of the way they dominated this game, Patrick Mahomes still throws 46 times, and both Rashee Rice, who really broke out in the second half, and Xavier Worthy, who made some nice plays, including a 30-yard spinning catch where the pass, again, not particularly well thrown to him, and he adjusts to it, something that people have really criticized, and he possibly hasn't done as well as some of the receivers. But you see that play, that kind of suggests that the Chiefs will have that going forward.
But he also had
it's just really annoying that the Chiefs are probably still the best team in football, and yet this is what they're treating us to.
I don't think they're the best team in football at all. That Worthy had a back shoulder a little bit later that he didn't come back to. I thought he made some good plays early. He had the slant and the out pattern. It was promising to do some of that stuff, to see him do some of that stuff. I felt like it was a tough game overall for him. I feel like he's like, half the time he doesn't look back to the ball enough. He changes his routes mid-route, it seems like. I feel like there's a reason that Mahomes doesn't necessarily trust going to him. Now, in his defense, I feel like he's frustrated a little bit. There was a play where Romo highlighted in overtime that he was the vertical route they were trying to get the ball to, and he's the only one running vertically, and there are literally 4 defenders moving vertically with him, and then the throw goes underneath that. That's the kind of thing we talk about with like the gravity of certain players in certain routes. Part of the reason that Xavier Worthy is not putting up huge numbers, a lot of people are just like, he sucks because he doesn't have stats. That was a great example of like, Xavier Worthy doesn't suck. Defenses are aware that he's the fastest
people
player.
Who thought that Jackson Smith and Jigba was going to be nothing now think that Xavier Worthy can't play. Again, this is not a game where Patrick Mahomes is missing everybody, right? And yet, still good enough to the Chiefs 7 for 16 on third down, 2 for 2 on fourth down. Dramatic contrast with the Colts. Obviously, some of that is fluky, but we just keep waiting for him to play better, and he keeps not playing better. And yet still doing all the other things that a quarterback needs to do. It's just so weird to see him not exhibit elite arm talent. Right now you wouldn't put him, in terms of actually throwing the ball, you wouldn't put him in the top 10, maybe not in the top half. The reason why that's still challenging is that there were a lot of quarterbacks playing today, Ben, who just obviously couldn't be in the conversation. It was a rough game, but he made just enough plays.
He made just enough plays. He got those opportunities because the Colts have all the 3-and-outs. I was trying to figure out how the Chiefs ever even won this game, because the part of me that's so frustrated with them is the Andy Reid conversation, which is I mean, I feel like he just loses focus right now. I think he's too old. I think he's losing focus and just giving up downs. I mean, maybe he's always done this stuff, but starts a drive with about a minute left in the third quarter, down 20-9 with a handoff to Kareem Hunt. Great, you have second and long. Like, you're not getting anything out of that. And somebody had on Twitter this week that Kareem Hunt has one of the best like EPAs per rush in the league. I can't explain that. Kareem Hunt doesn't get more than 2 yards on any carry. It must just be because
it's like the worst 30 for 104 you could possibly have.
I think the EPA thing is just because he's always running for first downs and stuff. I don't know. He fumbled not long after that, which I wrote more or less ended the game in my notes, but apparently it didn't because the Colts were not able to get a first down after this. I mean, if your whole offensive philosophy requires the opposing team to never get a first down so you can get enough drives to force OT and then potentially win an OT, then you're doing things wrong. You're not being aggressive enough, but it worked out in this game. The next series, they threw that to Brissett Smith for that screen that worked very well after the Hunt fumble. Smith fights through contact. It's like a 20-yard gain. It's negated by a blindside block that was behind the play on an offensive lineman. And then the next two touches go to CEH. You can't play CH as your RB2. That is completely unserious with Brissett's athleticism and the whole Brees thing. I can't criticize that enough. It is not serious. It's a joke.
5 carries for 8 yards.
He looks as bad as CEH ever looked, so much worse than that.
The other thing I want to point out really quickly here, and again, you don't know necessarily when you're signing players from other teams, but there was absolutely no reason to light the money on fire that they did for Elijah Mitchell, because that money could have been used to do other things. It could be used for giveaways to fans. It could be used to pay the person off the street that
but
every time the team lights money on fire, I'm like, just do a giveaway for the fans at the game. It was like, you got to spend money because the fans will think you're not serious. Like, just give the money straight to the fans. They would prefer that.
Money. But if you're going to pay Elijah Mitchell, he should be out there. There's no excuse for CEH over Elijah Mitchell. And it obviously means that Elijah Mitchell hasn't looked good or whatever, but I still would play him if he hasn't looked good, because I still know that he can't look as bad as CEH has looked. But regardless, after pulling within 3, they start a drive with 7:30 remaining. Hunt right up the gut for a 2-yard loss. They're at second and 11. They wind up getting out of that and going down. They get a field goal. They tie this game in overtime. They get an incompletion. 2nd and 10. They run CEH for 3 yards. They get to 3rd and 7. They do convert that as well. Because when you have Patrick Mahomes, you can convert 3rd and 7. Now, 2nd and 10 is the worst play run, is statistically the worst play call in football, because the difference between a 3rd and 7 conversion rate and a 3rd and 10 conversion rate is negligible. You're getting nothing out of that when you could have potentially thrown for the first down on 2nd and 10. You want the extra opportunity to try to throw for it. Instead, you're making it a clear, obvious pass down on 3rd and 7, but you have Patrick Mahomes, so you convert it anyway. They do go down there. They wind up, but like that's my point about the losing focus and giving up downs thing. Like I don't believe that he actually thinks the way to win is on 2nd and 10 in overtime running to CEH. I think that's a giveaway call because he doesn't have a call on his call sheet that he's ready to go to. He's just not as sharp anymore. I'm sorry. Like it's too many times they're doing this. These, and I mean, they don't even run that much, but when these are your running backs, I guess it goes back to the whole thing, Shawn, of like, why did you not trade for Breece Hall? Why are you not prioritizing Brissett Smith? Why is Kareem Hunt and CEH your backfield? How do you get here?
A couple weeks ago, I told you that the trade for Breece Hall had so many positives, one of which is that all the people who argue against the value of running backs in general wouldn't have to worry about the fact that the Chiefs would run too much, that they would acquire this guy and become Josh Jacobs with the Green Bay Packers. The Chiefs are treating us to something that is many orders of magnitude worse, which is like, you say we won't do that with Breece Hall. Watch us do it with Kareem Hunt. And in case this seems like a thing where people are like, well, tactically, maybe this was the thing to do. I've got Blair's advanced matchup tool up, Ben, and they just ran 35 times with Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, again, in a game where they somehow ran almost 100 plays against the team that was number 1 in the NFL coming in and rushing yards over expected allowed.
And the looks that, like, the justification would be the looks that they're getting are run looks. Maybe the Colts played more nickel and dime against them than they typically play against other teams, because everyone does that against Patrick Mahomes. You can't run into run looks when it's taking the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands to give to Kareem Hunt, to give to they didn't do any Xavier Worthy jet motions. They didn't do a lot of the short, quick passing to a lot of, I think a decent amount to Rashee Rice in this game, but a lot of his stuff was actually vertical, more or like actual downfield routes. And they got him open, and it worked when they did it. They didn't even try in the first half. And if you're, this isn't like a purely a Xavier Worthy thing. Rashee Rice has been bailed out by some fortunate things that have happened in these games from avoiding really bad scores as well. But it was cool to see him and see how well he would run after the. But one of the reasons there was run after the catch with him, when they deigned to finally throw the ball in his direction, he caught some passes with no one around him and would have had a bigger game if he weren't playing with either a hamstring pull or a cramp in the fourth quarter, where he was consistently going into slides at the end of his receptions because he just couldn't keep going. He clearly wasn't 100%, but obviously able to play through it. Hopefully he is good to go next week. The Colts side, I guess, I didn't realize that they were in the end as bad as we thought, or as I said a moment ago, but mostly they only ran the 50 plays. Their yards per play still pretty solid. They were getting chunk gains early, not as much to Alec Pierce in this game. He does have a 26-yard catch. Both Pittman and Warren lead the team with 5 catches each. Early on, they kept showing the graphic. Daniel Jones was 16 of 20 or something for a bunch of yards and 2 touchdowns. And then it was up to that point, and then Sense was 3 for 11 or whatever. He finishes 19 for 31. So I think that was 3 for 11 from that point forward. But yeah, only 19 completions then. You get 5 to Warren, you get 5 to Pittman. Pierce has the 1. Ashton Doolin caught 1. Downs has a couple. There's a couple to Drew Ogletree, who ends up scoring a touchdown in this game. And so you get they have a number of interesting passing options now. I've been playing Alec Pierce on a few leagues where I've picked him up. You get the situation where it looks a little bit more spread thin because there's not enough overall passing volume. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, well, the Chiefs are tough to pass against. They have the best number in the NFL in terms of yards after the catch over expected. And I think one of the things I said at the top of this discussion of this game was that it was frustrating because I really like what the Colts have done. And I wanted this to be a sort of a celebration for them where they become the clear-cut AFC front runner. And because they were ahead, even though the overall stats don't favor them in the end, because they were ahead throughout the entire game, and because the Chiefs kept doing the things you were saying, where they're running into these situations where they would just have to have all these 3 and outs to make it work. It seemed like they were going to have that. Daniel Jones didn't come into this game completely healthy and didn't look healthy. When he would have a chance to scamper, it didn't look normal athleticism from him, but he also just very flustered in the second half, throwing late and inaccurately to his guys. Michael Pittman, a lot of targets that were off. Josh Downs, targets that were off. And
he was very sharp early, though. He was very good.
There was a scheme element to that where Steichen had answers. The whole thing that was just so surprising about this game was that the Chiefs-Colts contrast was so stark in the first half, and the Chiefs had no answers for anything on offense. Mm-hmm. The Colts had an answer for everything. And then the game flipped. And once the Chiefs started forcing those 3 and outs, the Colts really seemed uncertain at how to attack it. We know that they have been among the most dynamic teams in the NFL in terms of first half passing, and then they just roll out Jonathan Taylor on you in the second half when he blows big run after big run after big run, sort of like what Jahmyr Gibbs did today. Once they were not able to pass to set up that run, the Chiefs were attacking downhill on them throughout the entire second half of this game and just swarming over. Jonathan Taylor was tackled in the backfield repeatedly once the Colts passing game stopped working.
And just on the Colts side, for people that are wondering what I'm talking about, because they only had really one good touchdown drive in the first half, because one of them was very short off an interception where Mahomes was deflected by a defensive end. Their first drive, the Colts, it goes 7 plays for 13 yards, but they get a first down. They get a nice completion on first down to set up a second and short, but they get a holding penalty on a Jonathan Taylor run. So they get to second and long, and Deion Jones completes a short pass. Then on 3rd and 10, he completes another pass from 19 yards and a first down. They get an illegal formation penalty, puts them back again at 3rd and 15. He completes a 12-yard pass there, and they're thinking about going for it, but they get a false start again from 4th and 3 around midfield, so they have to punt. So that's how they only got 15 yards, but there's several good completions that we're not even counting necessarily. Not several that weren't counting, but they weren't able to put things together. Then they get the interception and close. Jonathan Taylor has a run that goes for -3 yards. Deion Jones throws a touchdown to Pittman for 6. The next drive, 8-play, 75-yard drive where he did throw some nice passes. The touchdown to Ogletree in the back of the end zone, 4-yard touchdown, but it was to the back of the end zone. It was a really nice throw to the back line. And then they had a 3-and-out to close the first half. But that was their whole first half. They didn't even run a lot of plays in the first half because one of their touchdown drives is a 2-play, 3-yard drive after they took over, inside the Chiefs' 5-yard line. So kind of a weird game, certainly for the Colts with the play volume and all that stuff. Not super indicative of who they're going to be going forward or who they've been, obviously, to this point. As you were saying, it would have been nice to see more out of them. We just didn't really get to because of the circumstances of the game. Was there anything else in this game you want to talk about? Well,
I just think that this game kind of sets up for a situation now where, as gross as the Chiefs have been, it is now very exciting to see what happens in a few days when they go to Dallas, with Dallas also coming off of that gigantic comeback victory. And then when you consider what the Texans did on Thursday night and how utterly dominant the Texans defense is looking right now, that game in 2 weeks between the Chiefs and the Texans, where just seemingly will be a must-win for both teams. And right now, both teams are playing so similarly. The Davis Mills Texans and the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs, similar squads right now. If anything, Jaden Higgins' emergence. I say that. I mean, he could have had a massive game, but Davis Mills just kept missing him. And also it was only like late in the second half that it seems like the coaches reminded Higgins, you've got to get both feet in. But he was wide open all throughout that game. That game was exciting for him. I think these next 2 games for the Chiefs, and then obviously after that they have the Chargers. So 3 more weeks for the Chiefs, must wins. We'll see if and who we can get completely knock them out. Ben, what about the Cowboys and that comeback? Is that what you had when they were down 21-0?
That's not what I had. I was going to go a different direction with it, but let's go there. Well, I wanted to swing back to that intro I was saying about the good teams, because you had said the Chiefs are the top team. I mentioned the Lions, and I want to talk about them, but we can definitely talk about the Eagles because that was part of it as well. But I think it's fascinating to think about who are the best teams right now, because the really good teams from last year. I was telling you when we were doing the FFC PC playoff challenge, it was a top tier of 3 AFC teams: the Chiefs, Bills, and Ravens, and 2 NFC teams, the Eagles and Lions. And like all 5 of those teams have been unquestionably worse than I expected in the regular season. You can quibble with the Eagles win-loss record not reflecting that, but as far as like how we expected these teams to look, meanwhile you have like the Rams looking dominant and the Seahawks looking dominant, and some of these teams that are supposed to be kind of middle of the pack teams that, I mean, I do think it's an interesting conversation of who is the best team, who is the Super Bowl favorites right now, who are we actually going to see in January go out and win the title this year, because that's going to be, I mean, the Chiefs aren't even in playoff position. They very nearly lost again. And then this was a massive game for their playoff odds. They would have been in and then you're talking about the games they have upcoming. They always have tough games upcoming because the Chiefs are always playing a tough schedule, right? Like if you can't play better football, it's going to be tough to run off as many wins as they need to run off. Anyway, they got the win today. I just think this conversation is very fascinating about who the good teams really are. I'm excited to read your write-up about it. But let's talk about the Dallas Eagles game, because I do think that one was fascinating, and it's interesting from the Eagles perspective. I want to get your thoughts on that. That's the one I just finished watching, I was telling you about, and I was kind of working through it quick because we were about to hit record, and it was my last game of the day. I was having some technical issues with it earlier, so I had to keep putting it off, even though it's usually when I would have prioritized. AJ Brown crushes early, a lot of volume early, big first quarter, gets the TD, nearly a second TD, didn't get his foot down. Speaking of guys who didn't get their feet down, and I already wrote up my stealing signals for Thursday Night Football on Friday, and I wrote that same thing with you that you mentioned about Higgins, where that's one of those things a lot of young receivers need to learn. It's like you don't want to get up in the air higher than you need to. He was doing that a couple of times, and then guys are forcing him out of bounds or he's not getting his feet down. It's about the only
nice 2-foot down catch at the end. Like, he does have control of his body and understands the rules.
And that's the only thing that he's kind of struggled with, because I just want to be clear, like he's done a lot of things pretty well so far.
Obviously teams are trying to take away Nico Collins, right? That's very straightforward. But once you have the coverages being played the way they are right now and the quality of quarterback play that the Texans are getting, Higgins is now the guy that actually gives them the chance to move the ball. Yep. He's the guy who has to be the driver of it over this next month. So that part will be interesting. That AJ Brown one was fascinating. It took me forever to understand why they had overturned that. He had the ball, he touched the pylon, it was obviously still in his hand. That's when the play is dead. And then finally, because I'm watching a lot of these with the sound not being a part of that part. And he was so focused on touching the ball to the pylon, he just completely forgot what his other foot was doing. Because it wasn't a thing where it would have been hard to get it down. He just forgot that was still an element of the catch.
He really needed to drag his toe. By comparison, there was a play where JSN nearly had what would have been his second touchdown at the time. He still got to in the back of the end zone where he elevates for a ball, maybe elevates more than he needed to, but he did need to elevate. But I thought it was fascinating. He gets forced out. When he was going to the ground, he stomped his feet down as quickly as he could, to the degree that it
break both of his legs off there.
Looked like he hurt his knees really bad, right? He goes, he collapsed. Yeah. But that's the type of awareness where I always say that guys need to be willing to go to the ground. JSN was a perfect example of I'm going to get my feet as close to being in balance. I can't see exactly where the line is, but I'm going to do it as much as possible, even though it's going to put me off balance and I'm going to wind up buckling my knees and falling to the ground. There's a difference in focus and concentration on the sideline between that play, which didn't count because he did get forced out of bounds, and what you're describing with AJ Brown, where he just seemed to not remember that he had a second foot that he needed to get down. At any rate, AJ Brown did have a really nice start, and then second quarter, Devonta Smith gets going, near miss on a bomb in the first quarter. He brings in one with a strong play in the second quarter, gets a jet motion tip pass right after that, gets down to the one, nearly a TD, but isn't able to score. Couple of close misses with him. They end up getting another touchdown there. They're up 21-0 early in the second quarter. Dak's already thrown a pick in the end zone. And then the Eagles start fumbling late. We get missed field goals from both teams. We get Dallas going for it in a tie game with 3:30 left and failing. End up getting overtime. I thought this, or not overtime. We just got or was it overtime? I can't even remember. I just watched the end of the game. We get a game-winning kick in regulation. That's right. Fascinating game. We get bombs in the second half to the Cowboys receivers. CeeDee Lamb, he makes a kind of long catch on a contested play that only a CeeDee Lamb ball tracker makes, just like the type of exceptional skills that he has. And then right after that, George Pickens is I'm going to go leap up and get my own and show you that I can do some of this as well. Some really
CeeDee Lamb was 4 for 75 on 11 targets with 17 trillion drops.
Yeah, he had a rough game. He had a bad early drop. He had I only remember the one. And then he had a fumble
there were 7 incomplete targets to him, and I don't know if that completely encapsulates all the drops he had in this game. I don't know 7 incompletions, I feel like he had more drops.
You have him for 8 drops on 7 incompletions somehow. What did you think about the Eagles not doing anything offensively, seeming to just rest on their laurels after they got out to a 21-0 lead? The AJ Brown stuff and then Devonta Smith stuff worked so well in the first couple quarters. Basically didn't see them again until it was 21-21, and then they're like, oh, we'll just turn the pass faucet back on. Why don't you do the things that you're doing well proactively ever? I hate this team for that.
Well, I think part of what happened here is that when your defense is playing as well as the Eagles have been playing over the last several weeks, and when current NFL football has so few possessions and opposing offenses are not very dynamic and you haven't been challenged, a 21-0 lead, which would always have been a sizable lead, starts to feel, like a 50-0 lead. It starts to feel like these leads where, you have the Houston Oilers of antiquity losing games where they're up by 30 in the playoffs, that type of a thing. The lead here, though, is actually just a couple of possessions. You go up 21-0. If you then give up a touchdown, it's not that many stops before the game is tied if the other team executes. And I think that part of it can get lost sometime. And it's one of the reasons why Dak Prescott and the Cowboys right now are the most fun team in football, because CeeDee Lamb is obviously a top 6 or 7 receiver. He didn't play well in this game, but even in a game where he played very, very poorly, he made, as you mentioned, a circus catch deep. He
One
impacts
of the best catches of the day.
Yeah, and he impacts what a defense has to do in order to contend with the overall scope of what the Dallas Cowboys are bringing at you. And then off of that, this was another one where Jake Ferguson has a lot of plays underneath. Kind of surprising to see his line only at 5 for 60. But right now, George Pickens is just clearly better than CeeDee Lamb right now. One of the things that stood out in terms of writing about him over the last month is that he's getting yards after the catch. He's one of these guys now where the before catch element and the after catch element are both fantastic. That's something we talked about for so many years as it related to Stephon Diggs when he was kind of transitioning from Minnesota to Buffalo and becoming one of the top 2 or 3 receivers in the NFL, becoming kind of a slightly poor man's Antonio Brown, for example. Pickens, doesn't necessarily have that kind of dynamism after the catch, and yet because he's making so many sensational catches and because he's catching the ball in space and because he's willing to play hard, there were so many plays. So that play that you mentioned, the ball is slightly underthrown deep into double coverage, and Pickens, who was open and could have caught it easily if it had been thrown a little bit deeper, and to his credit, Dak Prescott threw a ton of amazing passes in this game. He goes back through both of the defenders to make the play on the ball. And he's just been doing that over and over and over. And 9 for 146 and 1. Then the contrast with Lamb, he only got 9 targets. That was all 9 targets, caught all 9 of them, 146 yards, a touchdown. Once they got him going, the onslaught was on, and it was a snowball rolling downhill for Dallas. You felt like they were going to score. They probably have too many carries to Javonte Williams. He's superficially efficient. He did have some nice broken tackles. He doesn't give you that explosiveness that you really want to see from the back. There was a play in there where Malik Davis takes a touch and really explodes through the hole. And you're like, okay, this is a pretty stark contrast. Malik Davis isn't going to give you as many broken tackles, but you get the explosiveness.
To get some explosive, if they try to use Kevontae Turpin as a straight halfback and he falls down and fumbles on his own, because that's not his job. That's not a thing that he practices. If you want explosiveness, maybe play Jaden Blue. Why are you putting Kevontae Turpin at halfback and handing him the ball? He managed a drop on this game and an illegal fair catch symbol. He might be point shaving, I'm not sure, but Kevontae Turpin, rough game for him as well.
It was a rough game. One of the things you didn't mention, which we do see this from time to time, I kind of thought that maybe Kenneth Walker was soft benched for a while, or fully benched, or however you want to look at it. He didn't actually stay out for that many plays, but Kenneth Walker is dealing with a bit of an injury. He breaks to the sideline, has a long run. Kenneth Walker is explosive. Instead of cutting it upfield and taking on a defender, he walks out of bounds, and not just out of bounds, but out of bounds before. One of the things that was very frustrating about today is we got a lot of hard hits by the quarterbacks on the sideline, in part because the quarterbacks were trying a lot harder to gain extra yards than Kenneth Walker was on that carry. Kevontae Turpin, who is maybe the fastest player in football, he doesn't touch the ball that much, and yet for the 2024 season, for example, he had like 3 or 4 of the fastest ball carrier times in the entire NFL because he's just that fast. He had a play down the sideline where he's running free. Nobody is there. He steps out of bounds a good 5 yards before there are any defenders. And that's one where just your speed, and if you hit anybody, you're going to pick up like another 7 yards, which once you don't pick that up, then your team has to do multiple carries to Javonte Williams just to get to where you could have been if you had cut the ball upfield a little bit more, right? So weird things like that. It wasn't a great game for him, obviously. I mean, he feels worse about it than anybody else. I mean, it was his catch, right? For 48 yards. That 48-yard catch should have been for 55. But Dallas overcomes that. And that seemed like it was going to be a bit of a dagger when he has that fumble on the carry. They continue to stop the Eagles. As you mentioned, they continue to score when they have the ball. This was a weird one because it was 6 for 89 for Devontae Smith, but he looked like he was absolutely dominating the Dallas secondary. Should have been a little bit more involved, yet has the 11 targets. I do think he had one play that's not represented here called back. If there's a positive here, it's that you get 8 catches for Brown, 6 for Smith, 7 for Saquon Barkley. They were actually getting their dynamic guys involved. But it's a weird dynamic, though, with the Eagles, Ben, where you can look at the line here and you can look at the full season for Jalen Hurts and say, like, the numbers look good. But this was another example in the second half where once you have to put any of the game on Jalen Hurts, he cannot make the plays.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that takeaway. He was good early to build the lead when they were putting it on him a little bit. So they go up 21-0. The Cowboys drive all the way downfield, and Dak throws the pick in the end zone. And they're saying that I don't know what he saw in the end zone. I think Brady was saying it seemed to me like from his angle, because there were 2 defenders there, it seemed to me like the defenders were stacked, and he couldn't see the defender behind, which was Reed Blankenship, who ends up making the pick. So he thought he could just throw it outside of the front defender, which he did, and his guy would make the play behind there, and then this other defender cut in between the front defender and his guy, and I don't think he ever really saw him. At any rate, he throws a pick in the end zone down 21-0, and the Eagles run up the middle. They do a short pass to Devonta Smith. They get a false start, which backs them up from 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 7. Incomplete pass, punt. And I remember at that time thinking that was pretty conservative. But to your point, they're up 21-0. They got the pick in the end zone. You feel like this is a huge lead at this point, but that felt conservative already. Cowboys go down and score. End of the half, 21-7. Eagles start the second half. They do a short pass to Grant Calcaterra, their tight end, get a short completion and a gain. And then a nice pass to Dallas Goedert that goes for a big play, but they have an illegal formation. They end up punting a 3-and-out again. Cowboys punted it back. Eagles punted it back to them again with a decent amount of running in here. Missed field goal. It's still 21-7. Another 3-and-out from the Eagles that starts with a first down run. First down run, the one before. The one right out of halftime didn't start with a first down run. These other 3 all started with first down runs, and most of them for 1 or 2 yards. This last one is a first down run for 1, a second down run for 2, and then a 3rd and 7 scramble for 4, and then a punt. You go run, pass. They defend the pass. You have to scramble for 4 yards. They bottle you up. You punt. That's a textbook, like, you're being too conservative, up 21-7, 3-and-out. And if you do that, just to let me tie a bow on this, then you leave yourself susceptible to what happens the rest of the game. The Cowboys score a touchdown. The Eagles do drive the ball when they're now only up 7, but they miss a field goal at this point. You get a missed field goal. That's a bummer, right? The Cowboys score again, tie it. They then actually did move the ball pretty well. Hurts threw some good passes on that next drive now that it's tied, but that's the one where Saquon fumbled. Then they hold them to a punt, but their punt returner fumbles. And then the Cowboys are down there in scoring position, although they turn it over on downs down there. The Eagles punted one more time. But the missed field goal and the 2 fumbles after that, as I'm looking at this, you lose this game from the middle of the second quarter to the end of the third when you're not pressing your advantage and leaving yourself susceptible to a few miscues, a missed field goal, a few fumbles, then making it these couple possessions are going to decide the game, and they don't go your way, you lose.
Right. And there's no way that the Eagles could have expected a 10 carry for 22 line for Saquon Barkley. And it's hard to say that they leaned into him too much when he only carries the ball 10 times. This is a game where the Cowboys come in with basically bottom 5 per play rush metrics across the board. Now, again, they've gotten some different personnel through a variety of channels than they had when a lot of these stats were accumulated. So a different team that you're facing, they would have expected to be more successful with those runs. But it's a great example of the things that the current anti-running back crowd will talk about, the things that the fantasy douche talked about 15 years ago, and that so many people have trouble with when you run on first down, which is that making teams account for Saquon Barkley is not what opens things up for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. If you want to take advantage of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, you do that by simply throwing them the ball. And this seemed like it was going to be a great example of that today with how the first half went. I mean, the first half is exactly what the Eagles need to do to defend their Super Bowl championship. And so maybe the takeaway from this game is more, we got really bad luck in the second half. Those turnovers are unlike us. They're not super likely to be repeated. We failed to run the ball. Let's do the things that are successful the rest of the year. There's a possibility this is the game that actually unlocks the Philadelphia Eagles because you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith operating successfully side by side, and you have that in the first half as opposed to chasing, as was the situation when they have the comeback against the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You're right. It could be the thing that unlocks them if they recognize it. I just the way that they went away from it in the second and third quarter, I have a pretty big issue with. Shawn, I want to talk about the Lions too, who obviously a super fun team. Dan Campbell takes over play calling recently, winds up, finding some new things. He's doing some more play action. They're doing, more horizontal routes for Jameson Williams. They're doing some different things that are working well. Although Jameson winds up with, I believe, a goose egg. You said that Brock Bowers might have, or was close to, or could have had a goose egg. A couple guys we do like did have goose eggs
but
today.
Every single time Jameson Williams catches a pass, the Lions have done something illegal in lining up or
it's very frustrating.
Shooting within the play. I mean, 25-yard gain, offensive pass interference, 30-yard gain, illegal formation.
Yeah.
You guys practice these plays. You know that they're not legal. The Lions have run some plays this year that are flagrantly illegal, and they seem to only realize that during the game, which I'm a big fan of. That's probably when I would realize it too.
They did. They did a little drag route for him and just sent offensive linemen downfield, like in front of where he was catching the ball. So it was very obvious, and he caught it and ran upfield for like 25 yards. And then, he doesn't get those 25 yards because it's ineligible man downfield. That's a rule. You can't do that. You can't design plays that way. The Giants played a fun game in this one. You get Jameis Winston slinging it around. You get the interim coach bump where sometimes we see him pull out all the trick plays. They go to 2 trick plays, and both of them hit for explosives for touchdowns. You get the Wan'Dale Robinson long touchdown, and I thought that was a really fun and well-timed trick play. It's a 3rd and 2. They do a toss play. It looks like it's going to be a run. It's a flea flicker, but not your standard flea flicker. It's on a toss. Devin Singletary throws it back to Winston. Winston shows some great athleticism to catch the ball and sidestep a defensive lineman who is actually, potentially going to make the sack there, and then gets the throw out there to Wan'Dale, who's completely behind the defense because they're not realizing it's a flea flicker on a toss play. It doesn't look quite the same. Very well designed. They get a touchdown there. Later, Gunnar Olszewski or whatever throws a ball back to Jameis.
That's not how it's pronounced, but we'll accept it.
I have no idea how it's pronounced, Shawn. Makes a ridiculous catch through an uncalled defensive pass interference, breaks a tackle, flashes the after the catch ability, gets all the yak to help out his QB, old Zushka fact check. And
Olszewski probably, but
yeah, that's what it is. I mean, I don't like celebrating Jameis because he does seem, everyone likes to celebrate him, and I still remember the stuff from college. I mean, this is not a very great human that we all. But, I mean, he had some great plays today.
Well, ideally, he's changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
If that's, in fact, the case, then that would be great. You got to give Gunnar a lot of credit for throwing a better back shoulder than Patrick Mahomes today. And Jameis Winston, unlike Xavier Worthy, understanding that's what the route was.
I love that you called him Gunnar. You know how to say it, and you're still just calling him Gunnar.
If you have the name Gunnar, that's what you're going to be called. Ben, Wan'Dale Robinson spent the last 3, 4, 17 years, however long he's been in the NFL, explaining to Brian Daboll that in college he was a real receiver. And as soon as Brian Daboll is fired, he's like, watch me run routes down the field like any normal NFL human being.
Great game from him. He took a lot of shots, though. The whole game, I was like, how is this tiny little dude still standing?
Because like, I'm tough, man. It's like, I did this. I've been doing this forever. I can do it. Let me try.
He had 137 yards by halftime. Phenomenal game from him. So the Giants play well. They come out. They play well.
Then I'm not understanding exactly what you're having trouble with this Detroit Lions game, because Jahmyr Gibbs caught 11 passes, which is what we're looking for. And separate from that, he gained 14.6 yards per rush.
No, he didn't. 14.6 yards per carry.
He had 15 carries for 219 yards.
That's a Madden line. I mean, he has a long run at one point where he never has the angle and he gets tackled and he just scores on a reception a play later, and then a little bit later after that he breaks a 40-something yard TD, and then in overtime he just breaks a 60-something yard TD. I mean, he just got better and better as the game went on. But so my issue with the Lions,
but just real quick,
go.
Will there ever be a draft in your future when Jahmyr Gibbs is available and you select someone else?
No, I don't think there will be. I mean, you said ever, so there will be late parts of his career where people are still drafting him based on all of the great seasons that are already in his past.
I don't think so. I think that at 33, coming off of a 2,000 yards from scrimmage season, he's just going to walk off into the sunset like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson.
I mean, that might be the case. So, Shawn, Dan Campbell in this game, he punts on the other side of the 50 instead of kicking like a 57-yarder when they're losing on like a 4th and 8. And he was just talking last week about how going for it on 4th down is their identity. They're struggling a little bit down the field. There was a ball that Goff tried to throw into Rhamondre. They got deflected up for a pick on a 3rd and 11. They're in field goal range. They're at the 20-yard line in a 3-point game, and he's trying to fire a ball well short of the sticks into traffic, throws it way behind Rhamondre. You're trying to turn a field goal range into field goal range because you're probably not going for it at 4th and 4 or whatever it was going to be, 4th and 3. It was 3 or 4 yards short of the sticks. It ends up going for a pick to accomplish basically nothing. There, you lose the big Jameson play to the ineligible downfield that was very obvious. I just wrote in my notes that it felt like a bunch of details being missed with Campbell not coaching and instead coordinating, which is what I'm guessing the issue is. They punted again down 3 in the 4th quarter, and the Giants answered with a long drive. I wrote, because at the time I thought this was the case, that was going to be a long drive to end the game. The Giants get all the way down to the goal line and they get stopped. They end up going for it on 4th and goal. They actually go for it on 4th and goal from the 6 after losing 4 yards on 3rd and goal. If they score the touchdown down there, they go up 10 because Dan Campbell punted from the 44 instead of going for it on 4th and 9 in the 4th quarter down by 3 points. And the Giants they drive all the way down and they very nearly score. They get right on the goal line. They're not able to. They do turn it over on downs. Lions get into field goal range, and really they get into 59-yard field goal range, and their kicker bangs it home, who's not been perfect from that distance, ends up forcing the OT, and then Jahmyr Gibbs says, okay, I'll just score 69-yard touchdown on the first play of overtime, and then we'll go on and win. That'll be great. They deserve to lose this game. I mean, it's another one where, I mean, even if their yards are way, way bigger, like the Chiefs were, and they weren't bigger because the Giants had a ton of yards in this game too. It's not nearly as lopsided. But
this game went over 1,000, Ben. You're complaining about
awesome.
The game this weekend that went over 1,000 yards.
I'm complaining about the coaching decisions, situational, tactical stuff that Dan Campbell's usually very, very good at. You didn't have an issue with it?
Well, I guess not really. The part that I'm mostly frustrated by, because I think he was trying to adjust to the way his players are playing. I don't necessarily care for it when coaches have a philosophy that they let override everything else that they're seeing. I think you still want to be in the moment, in the game, kind of understanding what's happening in this game as opposed to how you would want to play other games.
But that's wrong. That's wrong because what's happening in this game is they're moving the ball on you and you punt in the 4th quarter on 4th and 9 in plus territory down 3, and they move the ball 14 plays down to the goal line and take up 7 minutes And if they're able to convert right there on the goal line on those couple plays, they get multiple chances, you lose. And you're not stopping them. So if you're paying attention to what's happening in this game, you know it's a shootout. You got to go get that first down. You can't just give up that possession, right?
Yeah, in retrospect, except it's one of those retrospect situations where it actually still did work out, which people tend to take the wrong lesson for that. The part that I have a problem with is that
I don't
Jared
think I'm taking the wrong lesson.
He came into the game in a situation where he's forcing the ball to Amon-Ra when he's covered and no longer reading through. One of the things that you saw today from the Chicago Bears was, I mean, the Bears did feature in the 17-32 group, even though their record is obviously fantastic. They have lots of problems under the hood. They're one of these teams that's winning a lot of lucky games. They have a game today that could have gone either way that they win. But Ben Johnson very clearly is going to be one of the coaches where if you're talking about this 15 years from now, not only winning close games, but also building a team that doesn't play close games. I mean, Ben Johnson is going to be the guy. And you look at the Bears and they're using so many different guys, occasionally to their detriment. But the way that the Lions have developed over the last, this season, right, in his absence, versus the way that the Bears have developed is certainly very disconcerting for Lions fans because the Lions now have become very one-dimensional in the passing game where Jared Goff is only reading Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's not the way that this offense was put together in the past. Now, one of the things is that losing Sam Laporta is a huge blow to this offense, but you would expect them to have responded to that by doing some of the things they've talked about all year, getting Jameson Williams involved. The fact that he has been a non-factor in this Sam Laporta absence time period, that's a big concern for how this team looks, for how this team is executing, but also for Jameson Williams himself and what he's actually going to be at the NFL level.
He was productive the last couple of weeks, and I think people were talking about being higher on him going into this game. I saw Hayden Winks from Underdog saying this is the high going into this week was the highest he'd ever had Jameson Williams ranked. 3 straight weeks of 6+ targets, 66+ yards, and a touchdown in all 3. I think there was people that were pretty into him. I've been writing some caution at Stealing Signals and feeling like I was a little bit wrong too. But to your point, he in that stretch, these last 3 weeks, he's had multiple games where he's had like no volume in the whole first half, and then like had like a couple good drives in the second half and been able to do some stuff. And I actually made a note in this game that he had no catches in the first half again, because he had this other one where he had no catches in the first half. So it was like an again thing, but then he had no catches in the second half in this game as well. So it just goes absolutely nowhere. But no, I agree with your broader point because I do think that drives home what I was trying to say in Stealing Signals as well, that not being involved in the first half of some of these games, just getting your work in one of these games, there was a blowout win against, I want to say Washington, and the majority of his work was like in the second half when it was already decided. We were talking about this on the show a little bit. They had David Montgomery out there running with the backup quarterback, and then the only other person on the field was Jameson Williams, you had pointed out. Just out there to get like a drop after he had caught his other 6 targets. It's been a bizarre little stretch for him where it's been production, but maybe to your point, not the most involved or the most centered on the offense, not the focal point that we would have thought that he would have been. And I do think that is a problem for this offense.
Ben, this is another one of the guys who's one of the fastest players in all of football. And opposing defenses have to account for Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And during this recent stretch, including those games where he was effective from a scoring perspective, you look at week 4, where he has the 215 air yards, right? He was averaging fewer than 50 air yards coming into this game over his last 6. Over his last 6 coming in, 48 air yards. And then today, Jared Goff throws 42 passes and he does not have a reception.
This is the part of it that has been confusing to me, is when people were talking about when I was getting some feedback when I was saying that he had not been as involved early on, and it seemed like he was doing more than I was sort of writing about, is a lot of people are talking about how Dan Campbell has taken over now and he's doing all these different things. He's doing the play action. He's doing more motion. He's doing more of the easy button stuff. And then he's figured out how to use Jameson Williams right. You get him moving horizontally. It's never that simple. Whenever somebody tells you it's that simple, I promise you they're oversimplifying it. And you're describing why. All of Jameson Williams' production was on short stuff with catch and run. Eventually, teams are going to try to take that away. They're going to readjust their offense. Where's Jameson Williams? We're going to have a dude kind of in a soft zone on the other side of the field that's aware that he's maybe dragging across the field, catch and run. They're not going to just keep giving up catches and run plays for 30, 40 yards and not make it a part of their defensive game plan at some point. So if all you can do to get him volume is one specific type of gimmicky usage, that does become a problem eventually. If defenses then account for that, what happens next? I mean, the fact that they haven't been able to get him going vertically with any kind of consistency with his speed and the other weapons they have in this game that should open up one-on-ones, defenses are clearly focused on Jahmyr Gibbs. That whole Vikings game plan was around trying to take Jahmyr Gibbs out of the passing game and all that stuff, blitz up the middle, make him into a pass protector. You have to have one-on-ones. Why is Jared Goff not putting balls up to Jameson Williams vertically in those situations? And I don't have a good answer for that. I'm not watching the All-22 and figuring all that stuff out. I'm just throwing out questions of like, it doesn't make sense to me. What you just said about the air yards does not make sense.
And in part because you know that Amon-Ra is going to dominate those areas and that Jameson Williams to be the full version of what he needs to be for the Lions and what he needs to be for fantasy managers who are counting on him as a clear-cut start and counting on him as the guy who was drafted in that range. Now, that may have been wrong. I mean, I think you can argue pretty clearly that it was wrong to have him there. But for that thesis to come true, there have to be more reads for him. Goff has to actually pull the trigger on some of them, and then they both have to do their jobs. Where Jared Goff has to throw a viable pass and Jameson Williams has to go make some plays. You've got to make some contested catches. You've got to work through contact on some of those. I'm not saying I think that they can do it, right? But it's still something they have to prove. They both have been a little bit weak in that area, and because they have the Lions, especially in games like this where there's 42 passes, but you're panicking because you're going to lose a home game to a Jameis Winston-led Giants team where, I mean, you're having to deal with Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyrone Tracy. We like both of those guys, but clearly this is not a loaded Giants group of skill position players, right? We get a touchdown to Isaiah Hodgins, one of our favorite guys there. Theo Johnson has 3 for 77. I mean, you're losing to a team that right now is very poor. You're not thinking to yourself, well, let's go attack a lot with Jameson Williams. If that's not something that you've established, if it's not something that the QB feels comfortable with, every pass right now is going to Amon-Ra, including when he's not open. And I think Amon-Ra is struggling a little bit. He ends up having 9 for 149, a touchdown. He does a lot of fantastic plays in this game. He has another clear-cut drop in a situation where this is like 3 weeks in a row and it's not exactly 3 weeks in a row. It stems all the way back to a key drop he had in the Chiefs game, where dropping that pass, it didn't seem to be that big a deal because the Chiefs kind of run away from him at the end, but that was the play that would have extended a drive and kept the game close. He's had some big drops on plays where you just never see that from him. As you're saying, I mean, this whole team needs to play better, with the exception of Jahmyr Gibbs, who's just off to the races to the end zone every time. And one of the things that's so fun about Gibbs is he understands where the end zone is and where his bread is buttered. And when he gets going, it's not just how fast he is, but it's what he looks like when he's running, right? I mean, this is why we watch sports, is to be thrilled. And there's nothing more thrilling than watching Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's really fun when he is in the open field and the announcer's like, he might take it. And you're like, oh, he's definitely taking it. I mean, he's taking it. That guy is not catching him. It doesn't seem like he has the angle, but he's going to get the angle. I think you put that really well when you were talking about Jameson. What I was trying to say, the shallow crossing stuff, the catch and run stuff, that's using his speed horizontally is obviously good. But one of the things you said there was the different types of usage. They need to get varied usage. It needs to be that and vertical stuff and other ways they've often done runs with him, which they don't seem to be incorporating as much anymore. End arounds and things that he's hit on some huge plays. He's had some like legitimate rushing production over the last couple of years. It's stuff that it can't just be one thing, and one thing doesn't unlock and fix all of the issues. This has been a year-long issue where they are not getting him into like enough varied usage of different types. They're basically treating him as a decoy, like running off safeties and using his speed to then set up the underneath stuff to Rhamondre, which, like you're saying, it can't be the whole thing. You need to then pivot back to actually throwing vertically and taking advantage of the speed that way. Shawn, before we move on, you did that great thing where you made a good point and then kind of slightly pivoted to a different direction when you said that the punt decision worked, with hindsight. Sure, they had 400 yards at that point already. It wasn't just because of the 14-play drive that ensued that made that. I'm not right because of hindsight. I'm right because of what had happened to that.
I'm saying you and Dan Campbell were both right in your own ways and both wrong. This game then 23 touches for Tyrone Tracy, 130 yards from scrimmage. Looks very athletic out there.
He did. 130 yards from scrimmage on 23 touches. The long play is a 42-yard reception where whoever's responsibility it was to guard the back didn't understand the play call. He either blitzed or went somewhere else because Tyrone Tracy is just completely left in the flat and there's nobody on that side of the field. He just catches it and runs. Literally, we say this a lot, but literally any running back in the league could have done what he did. He didn't even seem to run that fast on that particular play. He did look athletic on the other plays. He had another nice catch and run, ends up with 3 catches for 68 yards.
Oh, so you're going to say it's more relevant that he averaged 3.1 yards per carry.
That does seem a little bit relevant to me. He wasn't amazing in this game. 22 touches for under 100 yards with the rest of it. He had another nice receiving play, but the big play, the 40-yard play, was a little bit what I like to call noise. I mean, it's not entirely noise. It's good that he's out there and he's running the routes and those things. But when you get a 40-yard gain because whoever's responsibility it was to guard you just doesn't guard you. I mean, Shawn, you could have got 35 yards.
The Giants in this situation, but I did some leg work this week and I could barely walk up and down stairs. So I'm going to put the over-under on what I would have gotten at 17. The Giants didn't want Tyrone Tracy or Devin Singletary to score. The Patriots didn't want Treveyon Henderson to score. But also they somehow managed not to get Drake May in and just kick the field goal. This was a frustrating week because so many teams didn't look good, but also because there were so many sneaks that were stopped that make you go back and just give the ball to your awesome running back. What have we gotten ourselves into here that this is what football looks like now?
Okay, but there were a lot of people that were very confident that when Rhamondre Stevenson came back, Treveyon Henderson was going to go back to the bench. Treveyon Henderson starts, plays the whole first series, including third down, including a short yardage run he converts, a 3rd and 4 pass play where he protects. Then he comes on to start the second drive. Stevenson comes on for a 3rd and 6 to pass protect. Then Henderson starts the 3rd drive. Then he starts the 4th drive. And then in relief, I believe on the 4th drive is when Stevenson gets a little extended playing time, gets his first touches. Henderson comes back in on that same drive, which he started like a starter who went off for a breather for his backup for a couple of snaps. He came back on. Stevenson did wind up get a couple of other opportunities late in this game. Stevenson gets 2 tries from the 1. Now, I will note that comes after Henderson was in there for some green zone work. He was in there for a 3rd and goal from the 1 at one point. There's a penalty that resets the green zone sequence, 1st and goal. Then it's Terrell Jennings who gets the next carry from the 1. And then eventually Rhamondre gets the carries on 3rd and 4th and does not convert either. He only goes 6 carries for 5 yards, catches 1 pass for 5 yards, 7 touches, 10 yards. We've been saying it all year. Probably the reason you didn't even lead with this or think it was that relevant is you've been pointing out that Rhamondre Stevenson is not very good. But there's a lot of people that have been saying that Stevenson was going to come back and basically be the lead, or that this could be a 50-50. What we just saw is that this is a coaching staff that inherited Rhamondre Stevenson, drafted Treveyon Henderson in the top 40, wanted to slow play him a little because he wasn't ready. But now that he's had his breakout, he's the dude they want on the field. That's the dude that they selected. Right?
Yeah, I guess I'm not that concerned with that part of it because I am not on social media and don't have to listen to it. And I don't mean this like in a super nasty way or anything like that, because I'm sure there are some people who are very, very good who that seem legitimate to them. I mean, I'm wrong about everything all the time, but that it just generally speaking, that seems to me to be a kind of unserious take. You were talking about some of the unserious approaches that the head coaches had called here. I guess my concern is more about what the Patriots are doing from the perspective, what will actually unleash Henderson, because you do have a situation, as you just described, where on some of the highest leverage plays, they decided to go with Rhamondre Stevenson, who just can't play at all, right? 6 carries, 5 yards. Now, again, the context matters. I mean, a lot of those carries that he got were in situations where you would not expect to get yards. But the whole thing is you got to at least be Kareem Hunt, right? We give Kareem Hunt so much trouble. And Kareem Hunt, I mean, again, he was far and away the worst running back in football last year. And a lot of his numbers, despite some of the things that you could have not gotten much better, right? It's a terrible situation for the Chiefs. Rhamondre Stevenson is not delivering any of that stuff for the Patriots. And so why is he in that situation? Why does Terrell Jennings come in and take that carry? That's a really poor decision from a coaching staff that has done everything right this year. And you can continue to see those types of things throughout all the different things. But there's also an element here where the Patriots are kind of playing in the minor leagues in terms of who they've had to play. And when you look at this game against the Bengals, they should have lost this game because of coaching decisions that go down to different personnel elements. They have the situation that I was kind of referring to where I thought it was very capitulatory what they did, where they have a 79-yard drive that is driven in part by Treveyon Henderson. He has a really nice play down in the green zone where everything is congested. They hand the ball to him from the 4. He gains 3 yards. He barely doesn't get the ball extended across the goal line before his knee is down. And then instead of just using him and scoring, you go with the Drake May, enhanced sneak situation there. As a Drake May manager who had him in some key situations, I kind of thought that he was in. So it's not exactly that, but then you don't go on 4th down, you kick the field goal, you create a situation where the Bengals come back, score a touchdown, get within 3, this game tightens up. You have a 13-play, 46-yard drive, the Bengals at the end where, the end zone is in there. There is no world in which the Patriots, even as the away team, should be in a competitive game with this version of the Cincinnati Bengals, with Joe Flacco and an injured version of Joe Flacco without Jahmyr Chase, that they would have the ball and Flacco would be able to reach the end zone as you're going down the stretch. A lot of things that the Patriots should have done differently. And I think that a lot of it this week falls on the coaching staff.
The note you had there about Henderson getting tackled at the 1 on a play where he gained some yardage. The goal line stand that I referred to earlier also came after Treveyon Henderson gets a 4-yard little short completion down to the 1. Then they get an incomplete pass. They get another. So that the Henderson catch down to the 1 was on 2nd and goal from the 5. Incomplete on 3rd, incomplete on 4th, but defensive pass interference. So they get a 1st down. That's the Terrell Jennings carry. Then they get a touchdown, but with a penalty, offensive pass interference. But then they complete a pass on 2nd and goal back down to the 1, a 10-yard pass. So back down to the 1, 3rd and goal. 2 straight Rhamondre Stevenson runs don't get in. They don't give the ball to Treveyon Henderson again. After he gains 4 yards down to the 1, they give it to they throw the ball a couple of times. They give it to Terrell Jennings. They give it to Stevenson twice. Same thing that you described later on where Henderson runs it down to the 1 with positive yardage because he hits holes hard. He does sometimes run into his guys, but he's explosive behind the line of scrimmage in a way that you would want him to be the guy at the 1-yard line.
To put a positive spin on it, the fact that his teammates were so bad and that when they go back and look at it and realize the good things that he did, I think he's going to have that work in the future.
Has to.
But for anybody who needed those scores today, it was pretty frustrating. And it also does still raise some concerns about what Vrabel and Josh McDaniels are seeing here. It's very clear cut.
Yeah. I mean, he has to get that work. I'm putting it in my notes right now. for stealing signals. I mean, that's what we're, harping on here. And I want to make sure I articulate it that way in stealing signals. Nothing that exciting on the Bengals side. I thought Chase Brown looked really good. First back to run for 100 yards against the Patriots this year. They were actually able to run the ball on the Patriots, which was surprising. Mike Gesicki returns in this game. 3 catches on the first drive. Doesn't have another catch until late. Only finishes with 4. T. Higgins has 5. Ends up getting concussed late, which was a little bit scary. Mitchell Tinsley comes in for him and scores a touchdown the very next play. Andre Yosevosh, 4 catches, 61 yards. Not a ton on the Bengals passing side. Did you have anything else?
Well, it's kind of frustrating that Tinsley is only freed up once you lose Higgins. He's been so dynamic. You've got to figure out a way to get him involved in this game before that juncture. Maybe you win if you have a game plan that includes him. I understand as a young player and you've got the different roles and you have the different routes. Just another small thing where it doesn't seem like the Bengals coaching staff is maximizing the talent that they have. And I agree. Chase Brown looked absolutely fantastic. He was so frustrating over the first half of the season. He looks really good right now. Had a trade offer come in right before the FFPC deadline this morning, which was essentially Chase Brown for a pick that could turn out to be the 112. And as much as I think that you should trade running backs, you're going to run into the situation sometime in the future where Chase Brown is very frustrating again, in all likelihood. As much as you want to keep churning to get that youth, because of the way the FFPC works, where it's important to win the backdraw if you're going to miss the playoffs, which that's one of the reasons why we would have made that trade. I think that Chase Brown is going to be a valuable part of everybody's playoff push down the stretch. I mean, this would have been a fun game for the Bengals to win on the AFC side because at 4-7 and with Joe Burrow probably coming back and Jahmyr Chase available. I mean, there's been a lot of close but not quite on the Bengals side. And as much legitimate criticism as there is for Cincinnati, this is also a situation where you want them to thrive to an extent because the Bengals are one of the few teams giving us exciting football and the potential for really exciting football over the next month and a half.
Another team giving us exciting football right now. It's Arizona Cardinals. Jacoby Brissett completes 33 more passes, 300 plus yards. They end up losing an OT, but not for a lack of trying. Michael Wilson, 15 targets, 10 more catches. Trey McBride, 10 targets, 9 catches. He was the guy all early. Wilson ends up catching a bunch. I mean, he was active throughout. Wilson has looked, I mean, dare I say, better than Marvin Harrison in this offense. More integrated. It's looked easier to get him the ball than it's ever looked for Marvin Harrison over the 2 years so far. Now, a lot of that was tied to Kyler, but you want to see things look easy for getting receptions for your players, and it's looked easy for Michael Wilson over these 2 games where he's had a massive eruption.
Brissett is one of those looking at how teams work and how players interact, and you're looking at 11 guys and it's a full unit and you can't evaluate players in isolation. And you also think about all of the players who have had these comeback stories. And you think about where Baker Mayfield is now, you think about what Jacoby Brissett is currently doing, but does it feel to you like what's happening with Brissett and how good he looks, but the unlocking of receivers like Michael Wilson, who was completely irrelevant for multiple seasons, this is almost a death knell for Kyler's future in the NFL. Yeah. Teams looking to acquire quarterbacks are going to be seeing the same things about him, not to the exact same extent, not the exact same things, but you think about Justin Fields and how he's probably done. I mean, if you can't get your wide receivers going, then you really can't play for a team that has playoff and Super Bowl aspirations.
Well, one of the massive storylines for this year, every year at the end of the season, I write my my piece about the biggest takeaways from the year that are sort of more macro, and I started taking some notes on that this week, and one of them will probably be that the mobile QB bubble popped to a certain degree. It was a super popular trend over about the last 10 years, but the stuff that seems shaky with the Trey Lances and the Anthony Richardsons of the world is now has hit the Kyler Murrays and the Justin Fields of the world. I mean, better prospects, guys that were actually successful collegiately. And I mean, if you can't, the way that I've talked about this before is that I think, well, I'm not saying this is true about these guys, but if you can't read and process disguised secondaries, you're lost in the NFL right now. They're disguising everything. They're doing the half field stuff. Everything's about stopping the explosives. You have to be able to read and process. And I think the issue with the mobiles, the way that I've talked about it, I'm not saying that because there are plenty of mobile QBs who can do that. But as a population, they didn't reach the NFL purely from developing those skills like pocket passers had to. Jacoby Brissett had to reach the NFL through developing that, through being able to process secondaries, get through progressions, and throw to receivers. He didn't get there on his athleticism. When you at every step are the best athlete on the field in high school and in college through to the NFL, you do have that you can rely on, so you don't have to process in the same way. And now that the NFL, the secondaries have gotten so complex, we are back to where Joe Flacco, which is the guy that made me think of Jacoby Brissett when we were talking about the Bengals, and you're talking about how fun they can be, and Jacoby Brissett, and what Matthew Stafford's doing, who's maybe the MVP of the league, and people are talking about. And even the Sam Darnold season, who's that type of player.
I'm worried about anybody who's not voting for Jackson Smith and Jigba right now.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Baker Mayfield, a name you mentioned. He's shown some more mobility the last couple of years, but he's certainly a pass first, a guy who can read out and pushes vertically and is able to it's reading and getting the ball out early. That's what I love about Brissett. The ball gets out. He gets the ball out. I mean, he took a decent number of sacks in this game, but you got to assume that the guys are mostly covered on those plays. He gets attempts off, man. He got 49 more attempts off today, 57 last week, and he completed over 80% of them last week. That's how he broke. It was the completions record that you weren't sure about. But he has 33 completions more today.
And the Jaguars defense is very good. They were the second fastest team in the NFL coming in time to pressure. I can't imagine those numbers got worse today because Jacoby Brissett had to unleash the ball, had to get rid of the ball the split second that he had it over and over. And yet, even with that being the case, now granted, there were some incomplete passes, there were a lot of sacks. The Jaguars win this game. But you watch the last 2 weeks and you're thinking to yourself, like, how would you even stop Michael Wilson? You could get to the point where you watch the games and you're thinking, I don't know what a defense would even do. I mean, he's wide open on all these plays. The scheme that looked so bad with Kyler Murray, you're now like,
yeah,
Drew's got the whole thing. I mean, he can do anything, right? He's got Trey McBride open on all these plays. Yep. They don't have a running game. I mean, they've got some stats from the guys, but they don't have a legitimate runner, right? And yet they can get Michael Wilson open on every single play. You give so much credit to the coordinator, so much credit to Wilson, but it all comes back to what Jacoby Brissett is doing, which it's pretty crazy. The Cardinals should have been destroyed in this game. Their defense is absolutely horrible. And the Jaguars defense is fantastic. You put the overall teams together here. This should have been a blowout victory, but Jacoby Brissett is, I mean, he and Trevor Lawrence, not in the same vicinity in terms of how they're playing football.
Yeah, Lawrence struggled in this one. There's been a lot of talk about two other NFC West teams symbolizing some changes in the sport. Obviously, the Rams, the Seahawks, they met last week. The Cardinals are a really good symbol of everything that I was just talking about. I mean, the fact that you're talking about Kyler being sort of on the outs and quickly over the last couple of years, and Brissett resurrecting his career and what they are as quarterbacks and what that symbolizes about how you can attack the modern NFL defenses. One of the things that I think is so fascinating that I'm hearing now, Shawn, is the really in vogue thing now is to do more under center because you can pair your run game and your pass game together. Ben Johnson has done a lot of that. Josh McDaniels was talking about it this week. There was a quote that circulated on social that they want to do more from under center, or they like to do more from under center because then you're less predictable. You can make the pass game look more like the run game. Lions have been doing this for a long time. They love to do the Jared Goff drop back play action. What I think is so fascinating about that is I feel like I always talk about how the NFL is not cyclical because it's evolving. but I feel like we've done kind of a cyclical loop in this regard where if you start from like pre-2010 and the 2005 era, you had all the single back offenses, and around 2010 is when shotgun started becoming popular. The highest teams in the league ran shotgun like 25 to 30% or whatever. I remember writing about this early in my fantasy career. The guys over at Football Outsiders had definitely tracked the year in, year out stuff, and I had used a link to one of their articles that was tracking like 2010 to 2015. I used the link to that article from like 2016 to like 2018 in a bunch of different pieces that I wrote that was like, here's the way that the shotgun is evolving. But it was the top teams were 25 to 30% shotgun. And then 5 years later, the bottom teams were 25 to 30% shotgun. The top teams were 75%. Though it took over the league very quickly. Everyone was doing shotgun. And then it was more 3 wide receiver sets, right? And then because that was in 2014, we got the illegal contact, we got the defensive holding, all that stuff, right? Okay, we'll go to 3 wide receiver sets. We can get lighter wide receivers on the field because they can't get jammed. Defenses started switching to nickel and dime more. They started drafting more secondary pieces. They got lighter. All of this was an evolution that took the sport to a like new heights passing in the late teens, 2020, and then 2021, 2022, we get the shock to the system of defenses foundationally changed the whole way they want to do stuff. We're not going to say we need to stop the run and let you pass on us. Everything's going to be about stopping the pass now. And that is, I mean, we have the quotes from Robert Saleh and all that stuff. We have that great the play caller series that they did over at the Athletic, Jordan Rodriguez hosted, and they talked to all the coaches. They literally laid it out in an incredible podcast series. That was the shock to the system, like we talk about with Taleb's like anti-fragility stuff. And ever since that shock of the defense is saying, it's not just that you guys are going to prioritize the pass on offense. We're going to prioritize the pass. We recognize it's the more efficient thing as well. Ever since then, the offensive sport has just has gone back to 2005 football. We went to more tight ends. We've gotten fullbacks back in the game somehow. Now it's under center is innovative. My whole point of the evolving of shotgun is it's only been around for like 20 years, and passing got so dynamic that defenses were like, well, that's what we're taking away. And now we're like, well, okay, against these types of defenses, we got to go back to under center. We have to make you respect the run, and then we have to throw off the run looks. And it's going back to 2005 football in some ways. Again, it's evolutionary because the defenses are doing different things, but it is just de-evolving from the 10 years or 15 years leading to 2020. That's what we've been doing for like 5 years since. It's kind of fascinating to me. But anyway, we're heading back towards pocket passers. We're heading back towards Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. They had games like this, 33 for 49. We used to get these games all the time. Some of that was because defenses were playing differently and they were allowing more of this. But the Joe Flacco, the Jacoby Brissett, those quarterbacks, and they're so fun for fantasy. All these completions, there's so many stats here for the skill position players. We are heading back toward that way. I feel like 2025 is still very much a transition year. We're still very much in a transitional stage of the evolutionary process of football. But one of the things that I think that I'm excited about for like 2026, 2027 going forward is this type of quarterback is going to have to be prioritized again. And on the other side, Trevor Lawrence should be this type of quarterback, but he can't read it out as well. I mean, he's having issues with it. He throws the 3 interceptions. It comes down to, can you process? Can you identify things? Can you see the field well enough? Those are the things that Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger and obviously the greats, Tom Brady, and I mean, even greater than those guys, they're all Hall of Famers, but Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Drew Brees and those guys had that allowed them to throw 50 times a game and complete a ton of passes. It's because they could see and process so well. And this is what Brady does talk about. And I think he's right to an extent that with the shotgun spread stuff at high school and college, they're not doing as much of this stuff in the simplified offenses at the lower levels. So we don't have as many quarterback prospects coming up that have these skills, but it's going to become the answer again because defenses are doing all this creative stuff on the back end. It's the only, and so then when Kyler Murray's whole skill set and his winning traits are the athleticism, but he can't actually see down the field because he's so short, and he actually doesn't probably read the field very well when he can see it. And he really just relates on these, athleticism traits. It's like, that's all you have now. that could work when you can do the shotgun spread stuff, but now we got to get tighter formations. We got to get tight ends on the field. We got to show under center, run stuff. Kyler can't run that offense. I mean, he's just the exact type of quarterback that no longer works. I don't know how you run a 2025 offense with him, like you were saying. And so I don't know. It's fascinating. There's a lot happening at the quarterback position as a result of everything else that's happening in football. And the Cardinals are like ground zero for it. You can see it with Kyler and Brissett.
You can. The other thing that really pops out as you're talking through that is that the sort of and element of the defense, where they're taking this away, they're also attacking you over here. They're giving you multiple problems while they're eliminating the explosives, does mean that the offense is under a lot of stress that they were not necessarily under before. And you see that today with the amount of pressure that it felt like every team was under, including certainly Jacoby Brissett's and the 6 sacks that he took. We saw that certainly in the Raiders Cleveland Browns game, where you get into the double digits for sacks for the Las Vegas Raiders. One of the things that really popped out in ranking the teams down 32 through 17, and the only thing that ended up being a little bit of a bummer about the first part of that series was that when you have sort of all the bad teams together, then it ends up becoming a little bit negative in terms of how you're describing them, because there are lots of negative traits to those teams. They can't block for the QB. The offense doesn't have really a thesis for how to move the ball and score. And when you put a lot of those teams out there, then you have other teams like the Green Bay Packers who respond to that by saying, well, we've got one of these defenses that can cause a lot of problems for you. And as a result, when we have the ball, our only real goal is to soak the game. And Ben, do you have a team that you could, if you could just wave your wand and they would be out of the NFL for the rest of the season so you didn't have to watch them? Do you have one? Because for me, it would be the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, that's a good one. I love this question, but that's a really good answer, that you wouldn't have to watch them.
And it's not because they're, I mean, obviously the team that was much, much worse in that game today was the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes. There's a lot of teams that fit this. I'm just going through the games. I got to Thursday Night Football, and I'm like, the Texans are on my list. And then I get to the first game on the list for Sunday, and it's got the Steelers and Bears, and the Steelers are definitely on my list. Any team Arthur Smith coaches is on my list. Although, look, I've never been an Arthur Smith guy. The Darnell Washington stuff is entertaining. I'm not gonna lie. It's like it's the bit has gone far enough. He's turned a third tight end that's like 311 pounds. We found out this week because he, like, no one knew how big he actually was, but he admitted to it or something. He's turned him into like it's I don't want to call him a freak show, but it's the early 1900s, like the curiosities of the world, the Barnum and Bailey. Like, we have this 311-pound offensive lineman that just runs downfield and runs over people. You don't see, even in a sport where everyone on the field is a physical marvel, you don't see it every day. It's very fascinating to watch. Anyway, no, I think your Packers are a good answer. That was a bad game. That was a horrible game.
One of the things that started to creep in as I've described JJ McCarthy is Zach Wilson, but it was always from the perspective of, if things don't get better, or, you know, if we don't do this or this, then you might start to move into Zach Wilson territory. Today was much worse than Zach Wilson territory, because except for a few of the games where it was like torrential downpour and sideways winds and all of that, I always felt like there was a chance that Garrett Wilson would score some points. And one of the things that I noted, I think, with you guys a year ago on on ship chasing, was that Garrett Wilson had like a 20 touchdown season worth of efficiency missing from his resume versus, say, like CeeDee Lamb. But Garrett Wilson was getting volume from these horrible Jets offenses. The Vikings offense in its current state cannot create any passing volume to where Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison would even have a chance.
Yeah. This game sucked. Part of the reason this game sucked is because of the Packers trend. So you talked about. So you get McCarthy playing poorly early. You get the Packers taking a lead. They go up 7-3. The Vikings move down the field. They get to the 17. They go for it on 4th and 1. They're unable to get it. They did a 3rd and 1. TJ Hawkinson sneak. He doesn't get it. They hand off to Jordan Mason on 4th and 1. He doesn't get it. Turnover on downs at the 17. Packers are like, all right, that's enough fun. It's 7-3. We're about to go 14 plays for 8 minutes and just run out the whole second quarter and kick a field goal and go up 10-3 for reasons I don't know, unbeknownst to me. Then they get early in the second half, it's 10-6. They're still just like, they're not even ahead. Seriously,
I mean, they're barely ahead.
They're like barely ahead
against JJ McCarthy. Might as well be just kneel,
right.
Like kneel and punt.
That's right. But the unfortunate thing is, if they were threatened at all, they would have deserved to lose, but because of how annoying this was, they end up punting. And then the Vikings punt recovery guy is trying to block right in front of where it lands, and it hits him in the back off a bounce, and the Packers recover. They get a start at the 5. They just run to Emmanuel Wilson twice for a touchdown, and it's 17-6. And now it's over. The Vikings go 3 and out, and you start the next drive. Run. You get a pass here, a couple passes, some runs. Then they get another 3 and out. The next drive is the one I'm thinking of. It starts run, and then they kicked a 30-yard field goal. That was their 8-play, 5-minute drive from the third quarter into the fourth quarter to make it 20-6. I hate them. They know when the game's in hand, and they're just like, we're going to run the ball every snap. Although sometimes they've ended up losing to bad teams because of that, which is also kind of funny.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I don't know what the Vikings should do, because if you bench JJ McCarthy right now, then I mean, you're kind of in that Anthony Richardson situation with him already. If you don't bench him, you live the Zach Wilson experience. And right now he's playing well below the level of a player who should be on the field in terms of what it means for his teammates, but also well below the level where it seems reasonable that he's actually even getting viable reps from a learning perspective. You know, you talk about the Tom Brady thing where quarterbacks are not learning when they're not in pro-style offenses, but you can be in a vaguely pro-style offense and not be required to do what is necessary when your team just runs the ball and wins a national title because the other 21 starters are better than the other team's 21 starters by a pretty significant margin all season.
What margin of victory do you think, or scoring margin do you think you would need to pull your entire offense with 3 minutes and 37 seconds left and the opponent has all 3 timeouts?
It'll be 3 touchdowns, right?
Probably 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's not that crazy. They were up 17. It is 3 scores. It struck me as weird that at 23-6,
a little bit weird.
He pulled everyone with 3:37 and 3 timeouts, and the Vikings didn't even call their timeouts. Everyone was like, "This game's over." JJ McCarthy has thrown 2 bad interceptions the last 2 drives. This game's over. We all acknowledge that it's 23-6. It might as well be 230-6.
Yeah, I feel bad for everybody involved with the Minnesota situation because it's not, I mean, JJ McCarthy is not even like a developmental quarterback. He's not someone you would want on he's not playing at the level of someone you would keep on your roster as a third string guy. And again, these things can shift very quickly, especially if the person is young and has big time arm talent. And I think those things are true. And yet I just really can't remember ever seeing anything like this because again, the Vikings are loaded on the offensive side of the ball. They were moving the ball fine with Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz was probably one of the 5 worst backup QBs in the NFL.
He was bad. I mean, every time he got pressured, he just does that thing where he bends over at the waist and tucks his head straight down. And he either takes a sack where he gets a shot to his head for reasons that I don't know why he physically does that. Or somehow he ducks completely under a defender like he's a Kyler Murray height quarterback, even though he's like 6'4". His whole thing is very weird, Carson Wentz.
Well, the Chiefs have pulled all their players in Week 18 in seasons past. They've won some of those games, although sometimes that's because you were actually playing Patrick Mahomes, who should have been playing all the way along. They were not expecting to beat the Broncos in Week 18 last year, but I'm sure they were not expecting to lose 31-0 or whatever it was and just be absolutely humiliated. That wasn't the recipe that they had. And it's one of the reasons why Carson Wentz is not their backup QB this year.
Yeah.
But the gap between Carson Wentz and what JJ McCarthy is currently doing is similar to the gap between Jacoby Brissett and Kyler Murray, because obviously Kyler Murray at a much different position as well than JJ McCarthy.
If you think we're being a little too harsh, 145 total yards, 52 passing yards when accounting for the lost yardage on sacks, 35 yards lost on 5 sacks, 87 actual passing yards for McCarthy. They ran for 93, and then the negative sack yardage. Jefferson, 4 for 48, Hawkinson 4 for 19, Jordan Addison, another player we really like, who got 0 receptions today. McCarthy completes 12 passes. It's a very depressing box score. And then it's depressing on the Packers side as well, because the Packers only get 288 yards of offense, and they go extremely run heavy. And let's see, they threw 22 times and ran 42 times. God, that's annoying. I mean, I'm sure Packers fans are like, oh, man, that's good football. And like, whatever. 15 for 22, 142 passing yards versus 42 rushes. Emmanuel Wilson, 28 carries, clear lead. Chris Brooks is like clearly the third down back. He became sort of the number 2 back because Jacobs was out. But if Jacobs were to miss additional time, we got a great indication here. Emmanuel Wilson's going to get everything, including all the green zone work. They get a couple of possessions that set up inside the 5, and Emmanuel Wilson gets the carries and punches them in. On the Viking side, Aaron Jones early. We got some Jordan Mason as well. Mason has looked okay at times the last couple of weeks, but they certainly are prioritizing Aaron Jones right now.
Yeah, it's hard to play anybody other than the starting running back from the Packers in any game that the Packers are in.
Maybe Christian Watson. Christian Watson looked okay. 7 targets, 5 catches, 49 yards. I feel like he's playing good football. I don't remember him being this good. I feel like he's like
the question I think is, as the Packers get Josh Jacobs healthy, they get Jaden Reed healthy. He certainly seems like he is about to start playing again.
Yeah.
If you have Reed and Watson and you have Jacobs and you're trying to build into a postseason where you could compete with teams like the Rams and the Seahawks and the Eagles, you would have to have plays that you can run. You would have to have a philosophy that you could execute that would allow you to be competitive with those teams. And you would expect to see that before the playoffs actually start. But every week that we go along and the Packers don't appear interested in working on some of those things. I have to say the other thing that was pretty disappointing in this game, Ben, and one of the things that actually did jump out to me when I was writing the article, was that the Vikings put pressure on you, and they've done some things like the game plan they had against the Detroit Lions that so famously caused Detroit all kinds of problems, kept Jahmyr Gibbs from doing what he's done in the other games. But otherwise, this Vikings defense is also not very good. Now, some of it is the result of being the other side of the ball from a JJ McCarthy-led offense. But it was frustrating to watch the Packers line up and run. And again, it comes down to this thing of, if running backs don't matter, which you could certainly say that Emmanuel Wilson is an argument for, but if much of the argument is simply that the running game doesn't matter, which has to be the main thing, because obviously there's a difference between Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, and some of the other guys that you look at in the NFL. the Minnesota Vikings had no chance of stopping a Packers offense where you knew what the play call was every single play. The Packers weren't trying to disguise this. They weren't like trying to set up passing plays. They weren't camouflaging things and saying, this might be a pass. Oh, wait, it's another run. It was telling everyone in the stadium the play call, the Vikings defense couldn't make the stop. That portion of it also was frustrating for me today. I think that an NFL defense has to be able to do at least a little bit of that. But the main question is, will the Packers be able to build offensively off of that to have Jaden Reed be the thing with Christian Watson, who is playing well, like you said, to where this team can be a Super Bowl contender? Because it's so weird to have as much talent as the Packers have, but also seem to not have interest in that thing. They're just winning the game in front of them when for a team that is as talented as they are, that's not actually the goal, right? That's not what you're setting up for. That's not what teams like the Chiefs and the Eagles, certainly the Bills would be like, I mean, who cares what you're doing in these regular season games? The whole point is that somehow you've got to figure out whatever the solution is to take the next step in the championship game, win the Super Bowl. Being a regular season juggernaut doesn't mean anything.
I was trying to push back a little bit on something you were saying there, but I had muted myself. I was just talking to myself.
I saw you said a little bit there, like, he doesn't have his mic on. I'm just going to keep going.
You're just going to keep rolling through. I was going to push back a little on the predictability point that you were making, still working. The Packers started this game with a 7-play, 70-yard touchdown drive where certainly they were throwing and running, and they weren't super predictable. They ran on the first play, then a couple completed passes, another run, then a long pass that goes for a defensive pass interference, run, pass, and then a run. From there, they go punt, 14-play field goal drive, end of half, punt, 5-yard touchdown drive after the mistake, 7-play punt drive, 8-play field goal drive, 5-play field goal drive. So you're right that they weren't stopping them. They're giving up a lot of first downs. They're giving up long drives, but they actually weren't giving up a lot of points after that opening touchdown. The problem is that J.J. McCarthy just couldn't do anything to make it a game the other way, right? Like, the Packers didn't actually score 1 million points in this game other than that.
But every time today that an annoying team ran the ball too much and was forced to punt, the opponent would then fumble the punt.
That's right. It was absurd. But I was going to say you're right about the Vikings thing, and I think it's fascinating from the perspective that Brian Flores has gotten so much credit because of the disguises that he does in his defense, the way that he disguises the blitzes and the different coverages and those things. And I think they are not that talented, basically, or talented enough. And I think his whole scheme gets a lot trickier when you do the lineup and just play run defense every single time, right? Like, he's doing things that are like, I've seen some charts on social that are charting different things like blitz percentage and like disguise coverage and things like that. And it's like clusters where all the other defenses are. And then the Vikings are like way down in a corner where it's like, they're the only ones doing that high of a percentage or that low of a percentage of the different elements. And I don't even remember what the elements are. So they're unique. They're the ways that he's calling their defense is very unique, but it's tough to be unique when the team's just lining up and running it down your throat every single time. And I think that was part of the issue here, as you were describing. That was a part of it I was going to agree with. But the part I was going to push back on a little bit was like, even though they couldn't stop the run, they're giving up all these first downs. It does highlight that the run still isn't that effective, because even in a game like that, Packers didn't do a ton offensively out of that first drive and that short field touchdown. It's just 3 field goals the whole rest of the game on all their other possessions. And yet it didn't matter because, as we keep harping on, the Vikings offense was never going to do anything if they played 8 quarters, if they played 12 quarters. What other games do we got to hit on? Oh, we could talk about, kind of want to talk about Shadeur and the Browns. That'd be fun. I mean, we should talk about Seattle. I guess we kind of hit on them. Jackson Smith and Jigba still the MVP, and yeah, that's that whole game. Is there anything else in that game?
There really is, just the whole game. I'm not a big Rashid Shaheed guy, but Pat and I do have him on our dynasty team that is very, very good. But I mean, you've always need more good players, and you're thinking, the trade to Seattle. He's going to be back on a good offense instead of what he's dealing with the Saints. And again, he knows this offense. So it's not going to take months and months and months. Just, no points at all, not involved. Like it's entirely weird. Jackson Smith and Jigba because teams cannot cover him. Now, again, you wouldn't necessarily expect it from the Titans. The other thing here, I've got a decent amount of DK, and certainly with how poorly some of our guys scored, I desperately wish I could go back in time and put him into some of those lineups. He looked good again. Nothing sensational from his receiving line, although 544 and 1 would have scored a lot more points than many people who were in starting lineups scored today, but also has the return touchdown with how little they have. Cam Ward, I thought, looked good in this game, and I think eventually will be good for the Titans. Is very different than some of the other offenses that are struggling, where he still has a lot of flair to him. So, Shadeur, does he also have the flair?
Well, I want to comment on the Shaheed thing. I want to see his routes because I don't think he was even playing that much. I don't even think he's out there, and they're doing a lot of the 2 tight end stuff with Barner and Arroyo, and I'm seeing a lot of Cup today with JSN. It's bizarre to me. I thought they brought him in to be the other receiver because Cup's not doing anything. 4 targets, 2 catches, 24 yards, even though he's out there a ton. You need Shaheed's speed on the field. They put him in at running back again, and they gave him a handoff again. And that's all you're getting out of him. 2 targets otherwise, but not a lot of routes other than when he was out there as a runner. JSN, 167 receiving yards out of 244 Sam Darnold passing yards.
They don't even throw the ball, and this is what he's doing.
The rest of the team has nothing combined. They don't even have half of what he had combined. He has more than 2/3 of the yardage. It's absurd. It's absurd. Shadeur Sanders, 11 for 20, 209 yards, a touchdown. You get the Dylan Sampson 66-yard scamper on a swing pass. You were telling me before the games this morning, we were talking about some different things. I was telling you I was vaguely intrigued by Shadeur Sanders here. He's obviously such a hot button guy. I just wanted to see him play a little more because I thought the second half of the Ravens game, nothing to do with him not getting first team reps or anything, but just it was a very windy game. And after he came in, I felt like the Ravens were really trying to clamp down on the underneath throws. And I thought it was really smart. You got a rookie coming in there. They're trying to get him some easy throws underneath, some curls and stuff. And the Ravens are breaking down hard on all that. And so he was throwing into double coverage, and people were like, oh God, he's sitting on his routes and they're going to pick him off. And he did throw a really bad pick in this game, but I felt like he did hit some vertical passes that were decent. The Sampson play ends up being the biggest one though. And as we were talking about the Browns this morning, you said to me that Sampson has a negative yards before contact. And we were kind of laughing about that because I was saying I've been wanting to cut him on all our teams, and you have him stashed on all our teams. I'm like, he's not going to be anything. He's not going to do anything. He's not done anything. Every time I watch him, he's getting tackled in the backfield.
He was tackled in the backfield very many more times today.
Constantly today, and that's all I could think about. And then late, he gets free for a 26-yard carry, which is hilarious because he goes 7 for 23 rushing with a long of 26. And then he gets a 66-yard receiving TD on a swing pass where he gets free. And both of those runs where he finally got into some space, I saw what you've been talking about, but also hilariously, he had 2 catches for 59 yards with a 66-yard long. So he has the 2 explosives, and everything else was negative 12 yards or negative 10 yards.
Yeah, his other 8 touches went for negative. Do you think there's ever been, I'm sure there has been, but a player where they have more than 20 yards in both the rushing game and the passing game, but their total yards on both sides are less than their longest gain on both sides? Because that's what he did.
That's what he did. It's crazy. But yeah, he looked really fast and explosive and fun. Shadeur did complete a couple passes downfield. We were joking. Jerry Jeudy has 1 catch in this game. I was laughing to you about it, and then you said you wanted to save it for the show.
Well, you just feel bad, right? Especially if you love Jerry Jeudy or have in the past. You have this love affair and your heart is broken, but you still have these residual feelings, and he catches this ball and he's down the field, and you can tell that he doesn't see the guy, and he goes into the stylized, I'm going to jump in the air. and like put a move on, and it's going to be tricky because I've jumped in the air and they're not going to be able to time how I'm going to like come down out of this jump and like into a trot and explode by him. And as he's up in the air, the guy he doesn't see knocks the ball away. You're like, for those of us who are watching it, Jerry, we knew that the ball was going to be fumbled the entire play.
He slowed. He did everything you said. Like he was setting up a juke, but he slowed so far down because he was like, I haven't been in the open field in 7 weeks. I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to make a meal out of this. And the guy comes up behind him and is like, you're giving me more time than I could ever have to line up this punch that you can't see coming. This is going to be the biggest fumble of all time. And the ball just goes flying. And Jerry Jeudy's body language is like, oh, man, there's other players on the field. I just let this guy run up behind me. You said before that what you're going to say for the show, you said that was the most Jerry Jeudy thing ever. And it was the most Jerry Jeudy play of all time.
I just, it's heartbreaking. I'm feeling so much emotion just like thinking about that play in the context of the season.
We have Jerry Jeudy. I did a breakdown of our teams on Stealing Signals last week, Sean, and I was laughing because all of our bad teams have Jerry Jeudy. I was like, this is one of the common threads. Then
all of my good teams have him too.
I went and looked at our good teams, and 3 of our 4 teams that were auto-qualifying had him as well. It's like, oh, yeah, we just drafted Jerry Jeudy on every single team. He's been bad. Tyler Lockett leads the Raiders in receiving. You mentioned Brock Bowers. 4 catches in garbage time, winds up with 6 for 55.
That's pretty good.
Raiders.
Line. That's going to be 14.5 points in tight end premium.
The Raiders are firmly on my team that I would stop watching list, even though I love Brock Bowers.
And Ashton Jeanty. So they don't use him hardly at all last week, although they did throw the ball to him. 25 touches today. He has over 100 yards from scrimmage, has the 8 receptions, has the touchdown. You wouldn't necessarily guess it from the fact that the Raiders basically never move the ball in this game and lose to the Browns 24-10. But Ashton Jeanty had a huge fantasy performance.
Yeah, he was awesome. Caught 8 passes. They've done this the last couple of weeks now where they're like, we can't run the ball, so we'll just swing past it and get you into space that way. It's pretty great. He's catching a ton of balls.
17 carries for 50 yards today. So they did try him in that too. And like I said, they can't do that part.
Can't do any of it. But 8 catches, had 6 catches last week, 5 3 weeks ago. His receiving has really taken off. If you're in PPR leagues, Ashton Jeanty looks like a steal right now. I mean, he looks like a great option right now.
Yeah, we have him on our FFPC Dynasty team. We're excited that we do. Things are going to move in the right direction for the Raiders, but the way that I wrote them up this week is just the decision to draft Jeanty in such a deep class and then to draft Besh and Deontay Thornton. You just can't do those types of things. You'll never build a roster that way. The blocking here, the offensive line metrics for the Raiders for the season, one of the things I went into on Smith is he hasn't played well, but also he doesn't really have much chance. And you could see that today with the fact that he had to go to Tyler Lockett to get anything done. It's not just that they don't block for him. He's sacked 10 times here, and it's mostly not because he doesn't get the ball or something like that. And one of the things that was so shocking last year is when Geno was injured and they had to play Sam Howell for a little bit, how Howell was sacked on every play. Smith swamped with the rush every time, doesn't have anyone to throw to. Tyler Lockett, we know, is done, and yet there was a play in this game where he has a sideline throw to Lockett sort of up and over the defender, in between him and the safety coming down, Lockett on the sideline, full stretch. It's maybe the best play I saw today, and it was within in terms of everything about it being skill related, and it's within the context of obviously the Raiders struggling to throw the ball. They've just built a really poor roster outside of their stars, outside of Jeanty and Bowers and Max Crosby.
Yeah, that says it well. They are not a fun team to watch. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to talk about that game. Is there? Shadeur Sanders held the ball a long time, as we know, took some sacks, but threw a bad pick. But I guess he only took 1 sack in this game. Interesting. He, the Raiders didn't even really compete, so they were just running the ball when they had it. I mean, this was a low play volume, low yardage game on both sides. Well, the Raiders actually ran a decent number of plays, but just really bad yards per play. But the Browns were not a fun offense throughout. But
had some.
You can mildly say that. What's that?
Had some wildcat to Judkins. And I've mentioned before on the show that I'm not as well calibrated for QBR as most other stats. That's not one I tend to pay attention to. But I feel like it's pretty bad in this game that Geno Smith was 12.7 and Shadeur Sanders was 8.7.
Oh my God, Sanders was lower. Geno took 10 sacks. The thing we were expecting was Sanders to take 10 sacks. Geno was just taking all sorts of sacks. It was crazy.
The Browns receivers flat out stopped running on a large percentage of the 9 incompletions for Sanders, which I don't know if that's because Sanders was not executing the play or throwing a catchable ball, or these receivers have quit on the season. But some of those passes actually came down where the receiver would have eventually been had he not stopped his route 15 yards earlier. So that was also a bit weird. Then we're almost to hit 2 hours here. It was a frustrating day, but as always, it was very fun to chat about it with you. We have Thanksgiving coming up. I know you'll have some great stuff over at Stealing Signals to help people get ready for that. But the other main thing here is that one of the reasons why this has been so much fun this year is the listeners. Ben, I'm so grateful for them, so grateful for this community, very thankful for you. I hope everyone has a great Monday night and just a wonderful week this next week.
Well, I'm not, Sean. I'm not grateful for them or you or anyone. I'm just kidding. We always do the sentiment. We do mean it wholeheartedly. I just thought I'd mix it up a little bit. No, yeah, it's really cool that we get to do this and we have people that listen and reach out to us and allow us to be in their ear holes every week. I hear so often from people that say I never miss an episode and those kinds of things, and it's always the coolest thing to hear. Wish I had an opportunity to get to know the other people more as well, right? Because it's such a one-sided thing, but we love you guys, as Sean always says when we close the shows, and definitely mean that. So thanks for always listening and riding with us. Happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody gets what they need these last few weeks for the fantasy playoffs, getting in, setting up their teams well. Hopefully we get some good football on Thanksgiving and in week 13.
I think we will. I'm Sean. He's Ben. Check out the stuff this week. Good luck tomorrow. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.